Damien says, good content because you don't focus on the day-to-day Bitcoin price and more what will change the future. Great. But what gives you the strong conviction that holding Bitcoin long-term is a game changer? That's another really good question. What gives me the conviction? And when we watch the video today, the thing I'm going to do is I went through it this morning. I watched it, and you could just tell. I could tell by their responses, like the people on the street, the guy was asking them about Bitcoin. I could tell the people on the street hadn't spent any time learning about Bitcoin. And so the conviction that I have over Bitcoin is a couple of different things, but the main thing there is that I put in the time, right? I'm close to 5 years into this thing now, 5, 6, 7, 8, way too many hours a day, every day, learning about Bitcoin. And the more you learn about it, the more your conviction grows because you start understanding the implications of a decentralized, global, open ledger and how important that is. So just myself as an accountant, this is the kind of the first thing that gave me like a small amount of conviction to look into this thing further, right? So my background is as a CPA. I was a CPA in my past life. I retired my letters since then because I'd rather buy sats than pay the membership fee every year. But as an accountant, the one thing that I saw was that with audits and stuff like that, right? So I talked about audits yesterday and how there's potential for corruption there. And our central bank, our Federal Reserve, has never been audited. They don't even try to audit them. But if you look at a company, and this is the conflict of interest here, and this is why I think Bitcoin is going to be an absolute game changer in the future, is because let's say I have a company, right? And I have a public company. A bunch of people have invested in my company. I have shareholders. I have a board of directors. And we have operations. And those operations are kept track of all year by the accountants, by the bookkeepers. And what the auditor does is the auditor wants to make sure that those figures, the financial statements, are accurate because they have to be accurate for people who are investing in that company. And so an auditor goes in there, does all these tests, looks at the verifying different things. And it's a good process. It's a good practice. It's necessary. But if I'm the company and I hire that auditor to do that, there's an automatic inherent bias there because the firm who's being audited, they're paying the auditor a lot of money, way too much money, but they don't want to lose that client, right? The auditor doesn't want to lose the client, so they don't want to give a bad report. So even if they found something in there, I'm not saying that this happens, but I'm saying there's the potential for it to happen. And so the auditor says, they find something, but they don't want to lose their $150,000 recurring annual audit. So there's usually ways around it. There's usually discussions. There's usually things that they do that aren't necessarily the most ethical things. And don't get me wrong, I've never been a part of something like that. I just know that there's the ability for that to happen. So with Bitcoin, you don't have to trust that. You don't have to trust auditors to verify those numbers. There's no potential for collusion, corruption, nothing like that. And if you think about how many people rely on that information that the auditors give, it's a substantial amount. So the beautiful thing about the Bitcoin network itself, and remember, you have to separate the Bitcoin currency and the Bitcoin network. So the Bitcoin network is just an open, transparent ledger that anybody can verify. If you're running a node, you can go verify that your transaction went through. You don't need to hire an auditor to do that. You can verify it yourself. And so every 10 minutes, there's a new block, and each block has transactions in it. And every 10 minutes, the Bitcoin network self-audits itself. There's no need for somebody else to come in there. There's no potential for collusion or corruption or anything like that. It audits itself by the 20,000 plus nodes around the world, verifying those transactions. So it changes everything. That's just one small component of it, right? And then you factor in the technology aspect, the micropayments. You factor in the fact that there's no CEO, there's no head to cut off, there's nothing that can stop this. Just how it is, and part of the conviction comes from just learning and understanding and studying it. And then you have the fact that BlackRock, all the biggest institutions and entities on earth, plus countries, are looking into Bitcoin, are buying Bitcoin, are mining Bitcoin. So not only can they not stop it, but they've realized that and they're actually embracing it now. And so if you don't see where this whole thing is going, then you just have to spend a little bit more time in Bitcoin. So great question. Great question, because yes, some of the claims that I make, some of the things that I talk about here are very much as if there's no doubt it's going to happen, but that's how I feel, right? And I wouldn't be able to sit here every morning and talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours if I didn't truly believe that. And I think that people sense that on the other side of the camera here. So there's the conviction. I hope that makes sense. I mean, I could probably spend a full show talking about that. And if I had a little bit more preparation, I could give you more points, but that's kind of the top of my head.